So if you think you're here to listen to the Fatiha and the explanation of the Fatiha, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll start on it next week. Okay, what are we doing this week? Well. It's an introduction to the Fatiha, inshallah. So what we're going to do is the background to the Fatiha, some hadith, some names given to the Fatiha, scholarly opinions on the verse numbers, context markers and their significance, controversial examples from real life, and the meaning of Arabi sounds and the linguistic significance of Qur'an. If that sounds boring, don't worry. It's not. It's very interesting. So just before we start, let us read Al-Fatiha together.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
So we recite the Fatiha, which is the opener. At every opening, we seek an opening from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whom we worship. He is our only true support. رَبَّنَا أَعِنَّا, He is our mu'een, al-mu'een, al-musta'an, رَبُّكُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ الْمُسْتَعَانِ. And we recite the Fatiha at least 17 times every day, loudly during the prayers and softly in our hearts during other times or when we're supposed to recite in silence. We plead to Allah, we open our hearts, we extend our arms and hands in humble supplication, and we wipe our faces with our hands for the barakah of its recital. It is a surah chosen from amongst hundreds of surahs to accompany us in situations of import or importance. And as you can see from the slides, Hajj, Salah, marriage. If you go to the doctor and you're worried, you read Al-Fatiha, may Allah make it easy. Alhamdulillah, that's the first thing you say if everything turns out well. And also we say Alhamdulillah when it doesn't, because Alhamdulillah always. When we have a baby, what do we do? When we are sad and crying, what do? We read Al-Fatiha for comfort. And what do we do when we are also in a state of a test, when we're either having an exam or in actually a life state that is actually a huge test? We also read Al-Fatiha and we seek Allah's support. Now there are several hadith. I'm just going to go quickly through them because we do have other things and you can always look it up. There's this hadith, if you remember, we spoke about it a little bit last week, about the Fatiha being a ruqya. Remember we talked about the ruqya, Reiki comes from that word. And that one of the Sahaba was on a journey, and when he reached some Arab tribes at night, he found that one of them was bitten by a snake or stung by a scorpion. The narrator was not sure which one it was. And they said that they tried to cure him, but in vain. And then what he did is that they asked him for treatment if he had anything, and what he did is that he read the Fatiha and he blew over the person who was sick. And after that, he told his Sahaba and his friends what he had done. But what he had said as well was that he asked for a remuneration for the ruqya. So he asked to be given some sheep, and they did. So when they reached the Prophet, peace upon him, and they told him what had happened, he smiled. That's all he did. And he said, how did you know that Surah Al-Fatiha was a ruqya? And he said, that's what I just did. And he said, you have done the right thing. So that the Prophet said, you have done the right thing, shows that the Fatiha is a ruqya and that it's being used for those purposes of healing, inshallah. I remember my grandmother, actually, she used to sit, and put her hand on her head after her prayer, and she used to read. I think it was Al-Fatiha. I never asked her what it was. I was, young, but I think it was Al-Fatiha. And it seems to have worked, but she never took a pill in her life. So, mashallah, Allahu A'lam. And when you see that the hadith said either a scorpion or a snake, it's because hadith used to be narrated by meaning. So not always is the hadith actual word of what was, let's say, the first quote. So you have the first quote that somebody said, that is called the matan of the hadith. And then you have the line of people who quoted that quote. that is called the isnad. So when you say it's a sahih hadith, you're talking about the isnad being sahih, meaning the line of people, the chain of narrators, as they call them, being sahih, meaning that they actually did meet, they actually did live at the same time. And there are, our scholars have done a fantastic job at authenticating the isnad. So, but the thing is that people don't realize that it's the isnad which is authentic, not the matan, meaning the matan is the actual quote. It was quoted often by meaning. And so people would say, qala, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then they'd quote it, and then they'd say, aw kama qal, meaning, or as he had said, meaning, it's not 100%, but it's as close as you can get to perfection, as close as you can get to perfection. And that's what we call a sahih hadith al-isnad. So there's a difference between that, of course, and Qur'an, because Qur'an, you cannot quote it by meaning. You have to quote it by the exact words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the main difference. But hadiths, they are what took Islam all around the world. So you should not at all consider a hadith, let's say, unimportant or not worth, reading or understanding. They are. And it's the hadith that people embodied and were exemplary Muslims because of hadith, because it's much easier for people to sort of narrate by meaning. So they would narrate by meaning, and they didn't really worry much about narrating the actual quote. So what happened is that the hadith became much more transmitted worldwide. And that's what actually helped Islam travel to all those lands where nobody had gone with the intention except to trade and do da'wah. So that's how it happened, mashallah. So we have here another hadith. This one is between the Prophet, peace upon him, and Sa'd ibn al-Mu'alla, that he said, I will teach you the greatest surah in the Qur'an before you leave the masjid. And then he took his hand and he told him that it's the Fatiha. He said it's the Fatiha, and he called it also as-Sab' al-Mathani, the 7 oft-repeated verses and the great Qur'an that has been given to me. And there's another hadith narrated by An-Nisa'i, which is it's ghaib. I don't usually get into ghaib. I just narrate things as they are. That the Prophet, peace upon him, said that he heard Jibreel, he was sitting with Jibreel, and he heard a creaking sound, and Jibreel looked up and said, that's the sound of a gate that has been opened in heaven today and has never been previously opened. And then an angel descended through it and came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, rejoice in the good news of 2 lights that have been given to you, such as no prophet before you has been given. They are Surah Al-Fatiha and the 2 concluding verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. You will never recite a word from them without being given the blessings they contain. MashaAllah. And that's what we recite always. And that's narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, should I not inform you of the most noble and excellent part of the Qur'an? He then recited, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So this is a little bit of background information. And for me, being a researcher, I look at hadith and I also am able to tell, subhanAllah, because I do so much research, I'm able to tell which hadith is stronger than the next. Even if they have the same strength in the books, I can often tell by words like Rasulullah or Nabi, alayhi salatu wasalam, what was narrated as from Rasulullah or from a Nabi, or even words that they use sometimes, little words in the narration. I'm able to sort of like say, yes, this it sounds more authentic than the other. SubhanAllah, with more experience, it becomes, more clear. It becomes clearer. So Surah Al-Fatiha has been given several names. It has been called the opener to the compilation, Fatihatul Kitab. It was never called Fatihatul Qur'an, by the way. Because why? Because the Fatiha of the Qur'an was what? Iqra. So Iqra was the opener to the Qur'an. Big difference. This one is the opener to the Kitab, the opener to the compilation, not the opener to the Qur'an, which is the recital. So it was called Fatihatul Kitab, it was called Ummul Kitab, it was called Surah Al-Hamd, it was called Ummul Qur'an, Asas al-Qur'an, Al-Wafi, Al-Kafi, Al-Shifa. Actually, as far as As-Suyuti tells us in his book Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Qur'an, tells us that the Fatiha had 25 names. Don't forget that the Arabs considered something that had more names than one as what? As a more respected or more elevated status if it had more names than one. So they gave the Fatiha 25 names. But these are the ones that we know. The healer, Al-Shafiyah, or Al-Kafiyah, and the Shafiyah, the sufficient and the healer. So these are the names also of Al-Fatiha. Now, how many verse numbers does Al-Fatiha have? Everybody's going to raise their hands and say 7. Well. That's what our ummah has agreed upon, but that's not necessarily what everybody thinks. I mean, our scholars differ, so it's not necessarily what our scholars say, not all of them. So it's very interesting because because of research, when you do research, you delve deeply into those things and you get more meanings, of course, and more understanding. So the Qur'an says, however, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِيَ وَالْقُرْآنَ الْعَظِيمِ. We have certainly given you 7 of the Mathani and the great Qur'an. So the Mathani, if you look at the meaning of Mathani, it is actually related to Thanya, which is a fringe. A fringe. I mean, that's all I can say. When you double up something like a hemline, you double your hemline, that gives a thanya. A pleat. When you make a pleat in your clothes, pleated clothes, these are thanya. So maybe I should, but I called it fringes because it's also related to it being on the edge. So the thanya is at the edge. It's not just a pleat. The pleat could be in the center, but the thanya is at the edge. So we have certainly given you 7 of the fringes, doubled or oft repeated, and the great Qur'an. So this is how we explain Arabic. I'm sorry, but that's the way to explain Arabic. You have to explain for one word. Sometimes you have to give, let's say, 3 words in another language. So that's what most people said. Most people said that the Sab' al-Mathani in this ayah, Surah 15, ayah 87, refers to the Fatiha. That's what Jumhur al-Ulama said, meaning the majority. But there are 3 people here who said no. One is Hassan al-Basri. He said they are actually 8. Amr ibn Ubayd wal Hussein Ja'fi, they said they are 6. So Allahu A'lam, 6, 8, 7. Here you'll see Bismillah is not considered an ayah. So if you just look here, you will notice that Bismillah is not considered an ayah. It is separate. And actually the surah was called Surah Al-Hamd. Surah Al-Hamd. So usually you say, like Surah Qaf. So you usually use the name of the first, when you name it, you use the first word. So if the first word is Al-Hamd, then Bismillah is not an ayah. So that's one scholarly opinion, that Bismillah is not an ayah, and it's not an ayah anywhere else in the Qur'an. Who said that? The reciters of Al-Madinah, the reciters of Basra, the reciters of Sham, and Imam Malik. Now, sadly enough, because of that, you will find that some Malikis do not pray behind the Shafi'i, because they say the Shafi'i, is it the other way around? The Shafi'i does not pray behind the Maliki, because the Shafi'i considered the Bismillah part of the Fatiha, meaning if you don't say it, your salah is voided, because the Fatiha is a pillar of the salah. Whereas the Malikis say, well, I can start with Alhamdu, I don't have to say Bismillah, so it's not voided. So some Shafi'is, strict ones, they don't pray behind anybody else unless he's a Shafi'i. So that's sad, very sad. I consider those things really, we should have gotten over those things a long time ago. It's important to know that the reciters of Al-Madinah, Quranic reciters of Al-Madinah, Basra and Sham, Sham is Greater Syria, and Imam Malik, they consider Bismillah not an ayah. What's being done now is that everything is being uniform. So like the Qur'an, the compilation, the Quranic compilation kitab is being printed, let's say in a country, and then it's the same print going all over the world. So that production, that text is being considered the what they call it, the legal one or the authenticated one, whereas there are others. But because it's been just uniformized, just finished, one size fits all, I don't think that should be the way. I think people should know that there are other opinions, other options, because that's what makes a society healthy, and what keeps your accountability, your deen, keeps it vibrant. If you want a vibrant accountability standard, a vibrant deen, you have to have knowledge of everything that relates to it. You cannot just say, take this, it's a cookie cutter, cookie cutter for everybody. No, there are differences we should know about. So another scholarly opinion is this one. So I'm showing you actual texts, from old texts to show you how they are. So here, look at this one here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is an ayah. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there, right? And the previous one, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, was not considered an ayah, right? But you still have 7. What does that mean? Why? Because you still have 7, because here the ayah there was an ayah at the end, which was what? Which was broken into 2 parts. Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim. Look at Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim. You will notice that there's a star where between alayhim and غير المغضوب alayhim. Whereas in the other one, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين is all together. So because they believe that Al-Mathani is about the Fatiha, here they broke it and kept it 7, and here they did not break it and kept it 7. So that's what happened. So here we have the Imam Shafi'i, who thinks that the Bismillah is part of it. He, together with the reciters of Mecca and Kufa, and in a narration of Imam Ahmad, they say that it is part of the Fatiha. Surprise! There's a third opinion. Now, this third opinion says that Bismillah is a separate ayah in its own right, revealed to be a separation marker between all the surahs, meaning that it appears at the beginning of every surah as a separation marker, and it's a separate ayah in its own right, not related to the surah. It's just an ayah in its own right. And who says that are Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, and in a narration, one of the narrations of Imam Ahmad. Notice what happened here, though. At the end, what happened? Amin has a star. Allahu A'lam what that means. So let's go back now to Al-Mathani. Al-Mathani. And some of you might think, you know what, when we delve deep into these things, we will get confused. Actually, subhanallah, the more you delve deep, the more your faith grows. I mean, I'm speaking from experience here to tell you that when I started to delve deep, people were telling me, be careful, you might just lose your faith. Don't read what is not traditional. Don't go into the books that give you controversial things. Don't, some people actually even tell you not to read Hadith except with a teacher teaching you the Hadith, or Qur'an except with a teacher teaching you the Qur'an, because you will get lost, or you will deviate and you will become of those who are dallin, those who have lost their way. I was very scared and yet very insistent that I do that. And so I did that, and mashallah, alhamdulillah, my friends can tell you, my family can tell you, that when I started delving deep, that's when my faith became, I cannot tell you how it grew exponentially, just by digging deep. So the context markers, the Mathani, what are they? Back to our talk. What are when I talk too much, yes, you might as well, just say ahem, ahem. I shouldn't be deviating off track. So the context markers, or what I call the fringes or the Mathani. What are these? So they are said to be, that's another opinion about what the Mathani are. The 7 doubled fringes are said to be the fringes at the forefront of certain verses, what we call the disjointed letters, like here we have Alif Lam Mim. So these are considered the fringes, Alif Lam Mim, Sad, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, Yasin, Taha, Ta Sin Mim, Ha Mim. All of these are considered the fringes. Why? Because they are at the fringe and beginning of each surah. And each one of these is an ayah on its own. How many do we have of these? We have 7. How many of these do we have, which is a full ayah on its own? We have 7. So another opinion was that these are the Sab' al-Mathani. So it's very important to know that what these are, and to realize that there is something called nujoom in between the Quranic verses. And as Al-Zamakhshari told us, he was born in 467 Hijri, died in 538. He tells us in his words that لَقَدْ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, I don't have his words in Arabic here, but as far as I remember, لَقَدْ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ الْآيَاتِ بِحَسَبِ الْمَصَالِحِ مُنَجَّمَةً, that Allah has sent down the verses, the ayat, بحسب مصالح الناس منجمة, according to the people's benefit, منجمة. So he used the word منجمة. منجمة means separately marked. بحسب المصالح منجمة. And in Arabic, the word najm actually signifies something which is revealing itself, something which is coming out. That's why the beginning of the ayah, حيث العلامات, here as he says, حيث العلامات تظهر هي تسمى نجوم, because of the fact that it is showing you where each ayah begins and where each ayah ends. So they used to put a marker in the olden days, and they called them nujoom. Today we don't know that. Today we say that the nujoom are only the nujoom, the stars in the sky. To us, these are the nujoom, whereas the nujoom are these nujoom here, which are the markers. And today you find, alhamdulillah, scholars whom I know, like famous scholars, starting to say that. I hear them saying that. Before they used to say stars, and today they're saying those markers, alhamdulillah. The more research one does, the more one gets, So here we have this section here of Surah Al-Waqi'ah. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. Nay, but I vow by the placement of nujum, of those underpinning marks. Why do I call them underpinning? Because najm is something which comes it comes out from below. Like in Arabic, you might say manjam. For what? For a mine, manjam. A najm is something that comes out from below, or it is actually underpinning something, keeping it in place. That is why when you look at the nujoom, which are the stars, you cannot say that they have a placement, because mawqi is something which falls and stays in place, or comes up and stays in place. So probably this is what the ayah means, that these are the mawaqi al-nujum. And I think it's very important because as far as my research, context is super important. So I vow by the placement of underpinning mark. And that is indeed a mighty oath if you only knew. إِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ. If you only knew. You don't know, but you're getting some information here. If you only knew that it's a mighty. إِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. Why? إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. The Qur'an is Kareem, and these nujum are what's keeping its ayat in place. It is a compilation concealed or guarded, not handled other than by those purified. A revelation descending from the Lord Sustainer of the diverse world. So this is about, Wallahu A'lam, it is about mawaqi al-nujum, meaning the context, markers of the Qur'an. Actually, if you look at it, that's how it sounds. That you vow that Allah vows by the placement of underpinning marks. It's a mighty oath. It's the most munificent Qur'an. So it's all related to the Qur'an as far as it seems to be subject matter. Wallahu a'lam. So the great significance of these markers nujum is related to the context and to the Qur'an as a mathematical marvel, where each word and each letter has its crucial, inalterable place in the Quranic unit. Many of you have heard of the Qur'an as a mathematical marvel. The number of ayahs somewhere, the number of surahs it contains, the number of times the word, let's say, Jannah is mentioned, the word Nar is mentioned, the number of times the word Malaika is mentioned, the word, so and so forth. You have, as far as I remember, I'm not sure of the exact sum, but as far as I remember, when I studied this a while ago, that the word Ard and the word was it ma or I'm not sure what it was it bahar or ma something, that the land mass and the water mass on earth, somebody checked it in the Qur'an, and it was actually parallel, like it was exactly the same as what it actually is. When we finish, inshallah, today I have it written just behind me, and in a book I will tell you what it is. The land mass and the water mass on earth is the same as the times in which these words were mentioned in the Qur'an. So there's a mathematical marvel in the Qur'an, which every sound, every letter is related. Context is critical. How many times have we heard this ayah being said by people who are against Islam, against the Qur'an? وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ. Slay them wherever you come upon them. We've heard it so many times. But the thing is that there is something called context. It is one ayah. The ayah does not say اقتلوهم حيث ثقفتم and then stops. If it did, then the context, would give you a different meaning. Do it. But here the ayah says, and drive them out. Continuing, it says, and drive them out of where they drove you out. So it means that if they did not drive you out, you have no right to kill them. But people who drove you out of your homes, you can actually, follow them and kill them, and then to do what? But what's the purpose of that? Is to do what? Is to drive them out of your homes. So they drove you out of your home, you come back to your home and you kill them. Yes, that is your right. You can fight them to death. That is your right. So this ayah shows us that, but people have been taking it out of context and making it seem as if go ahead and kill everybody wherever you find them, and this is not true. Only those who have driven you out of your homes, you drive them out of where they drove you out. So subhanallah, context is critical. Many of you will agree here, maybe not, I'm not sure. Without context markers and Arabi precision, what happened? Look at this. Marry other women of your choice. Now here, whoever wrote this, not me, whoever wrote it started with marry, capital M. The ayah doesn't start there. Marry other women. And I'm glad he put other, because he could just said marry women, because that's what the ayah says, marry women. It doesn't say other. But it doesn't start here. It starts way ahead. There's something way that should have been mentioned. It's a conditional clause. He did not mention the condition. So marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. And then he said, Surah An-Nisa See what it says here? Surah An-Nisa, verse 3. That is terrible. That is terrible. Taking Allah's words out of context and saying they mean what you think they mean or what you want them to mean, wishful thinking, and then you give the verse number. That's not true. The least he should have done, whoever wrote this, is make it a small m and put dots before that and write it in Arabic, the full ayah in Arabic if he doesn't want to write it in English. But actually what a scholar would do is write the whole ayah, even in English explanation, the whole ayah. Why? I mean, give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same respect you give people whom you're quoting on the news, in the newspapers. You cannot take somebody's words out of context. They will sue you. So here you have also in Arabic, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ. Immediately, فَانْكِحُوا. He started فَانْكِحُوا and he says, he wrote فَضَلْ تَعَدُّدِ الزَّوْجَاتِ. There's a great, fadl or bounty or goodness in having many wives, and he starts with فَانْكِحُوا. I mean, look, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the fa there, and this guy here put marry. He did not say so. He should have said so marry or therefore marry, because it's a conditional clause related to something before it. If you can, do not deny yourself the second, third, and fourth marriages, but be careful before you get married. You must be fair to all of them. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. So I'm not going to get into this deeply right here, but I just want to tell you that it's a conditional clause. What does it start with? It starts with the ayah, اتقوا ربكم. Let me see if the next slide has it or not. Yes, it does. اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة. Be aware of your Lord who created you from one nafs, one self, and he created from that self her mate, and her mate, not his mate, her mate, because the nafs in Arabic is what is feminine. And from that you have lots of rijal and nisa, men and women, and then it says be aware of the wombs that carried you and your relations. And then the next ayah says, and atul yatama amwalam, and the next ayah number 2, is all about the yatama. Yatama are the orphans. Give them their rightful inheritance, and do not exchange the wholesome for the unwholesome, and do not consume their wealth with your wealth, and that's a grave wrongdoing. And then it's still talking about orphans. What does it say? And if you fear that you cannot tuqsitu fil yatama, you cannot act the way you cannot give the yatama their qist, their rightful everything, the rightful care, the rightful nutrition, the rightful nurture and nature. You have to give them what you can of nurture. So if you fear, and who is it speaking to? I mean, who is it speaking to? To men? It is speaking to the general public here, right? Who gives the nurture? Everybody. So if you are unable to give the nurture to the yatama, to the orphans, as you should, then فَانْكِحُوا, then marry. مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ, those who are wholesome, طيب is wholesome, those who seem wholesome to you or who are wholesome for you, of the nisa, 2 and 3 and 4. It doesn't say which nisa. And if you fear, again, if you fear you should not be fair, then 1, or what you already have, that makes it more likely that you avoid bias. So, okay, so what is it about here? The yatama here are just the orphans. And here, this is it's a way to institutionalize taking care of orphans when there were no institutions. So when there were no institutions, taking care of orphans was by marrying the widows, especially after the war. This is what it was about. It was about marrying the widows, because in Arabic, the orphan is yatim al-ab. Yatim al-ab is called yatim. Usually, yatim al-ab is what today, if you want to go, let's say, all around the world, and you want to, in a Muslim country, and you want to do kafala of yatim, you will find that you are doing kafala of the yatim, but his mother is there. So what you are doing is you're helping her bring him up in her home. You're not actually taking him to your home, bring him up in her home. So it's the kafala of the yatim. So here this ayah is telling us that if you fear that you shall not be able to take care of the orphans, then marry of the women wholesome to you, 2 or 3 or 4. And that's somebody who already has a wife. Why doesn't it say 1 or 2 or 3 or 4? It starts with 2, meaning that you already have a wife, you already have a home. Again, we're talking about muhajirin and ansar here. You are doing the nusra. You have a home, you have a wife, and there are lots of orphans, and you fear you cannot take care of them without bringing them into your home. So bring them into your home marry their mothers. That's the way, another opinion, that the way this is understood. It doesn't mean that, now here, please do not misunderstand what I'm saying and think that I'm saying that people are not allowed to marry. Men are not allowed to marry more than one. I'm not saying that. It is here. So it means that it has been sanctioned. Marriage of more than one has been sanctioned. But if you notice, it has been sanctioned in dire circumstances. So that's all I'm going to say about this. I don't do fiqh, and I alhamdulillah, it hasn't, I haven't had the need to actually give my opinion on this. I'm just giving you the research. So these markers are related both to context and to the Qur'an as a mathematical marvel, where each letter and each word has its crucial, inalterable place in its units. So we talked about the disjointed letters, right? That they are considered fringes, and we named them. But then look here, you will notice that not all those disjointed letters are fringes, meaning that some of them are what? Are parts of an ayah, not fringes. The fringes, as we said, are those that are what? That are standing alone, stand-alone disjointed letters, like a group of disjointed letters standing alone. Whereas we do have disjointed letters here that are not standing alone, and they are alif lam ra, alif lam mim ra, ta sin, noon, qaf, and sad. Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. It's one ayah. Noon is not an ayah on its own. Qaf is not an ayah on its own. They're all parts of ayahs. So what does that mean? It means you have two kinds. You have one kind which is fringes, disjointed letters that are fringes, and another kind which is disjointed letters which are not fringes. That's interesting. Why? Note why. When we look at the letters and the phonemes and the sounds, we recognize in the 7 doubled fringes, bil-Mathani, and in the fringes, we notice that there are 11 sounds. Alif, lam, mim, sad, kaf, ha, ya, ain, sin, ta, ha. These are the 7 sounds which are these are the 11 sounds which are in those 7 fringes, because some of the fringes have several sounds. So we have 11 sounds. Remember that. What's going to come up is quite interesting. Many of these sounds, which I just mentioned here, many of them are repeated in the other disjointed sets, which are not fringes. Remember, I said that there are those who are letters that are not fringes. They are actually parts of ayah, like noon and qaf. So many of these sounds are repeated in the other disjointed set, which are not fringes, of course. Okay, but then all of these here are repeated in the disjointed letters which are not fringes, but then you have remaining sounds which are unique. They are not part of any fringe. They are not part of any fringe. They are parts of the sounds within ayahs, and they're not related to these 11. What are they? Qaf, ra, and noon. Qaf, ra, and noon. They are unique, not part of any fringe. Not the Mathani. They're not part of the Mathani. Remember, the Mathani is the fringe. These 3 letters are the only ones which are not part of any fringe. Now we can understand وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِي وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ, because the Mathani are not recitable. How should I say? They're not recitable in a way that you can understand what they are the way you do with the rest of the Qur'an. You cannot interact with them, because the Qur'an, you can interact with it. There are words there that you can interact with. The Mathani, you cannot interact with them. One day, inshallah, maybe somebody will actually find out exactly what those words are about. Inshallah, it needs fatah min Allah. But for now, all we can say is that all the sounds in the Qur'an are there, even those that have no meaning to us. They are there for mathematical balance and purpose, number 1, or number 2 rather. And number 1, they are being actually put there to show people that this is what the Qur'an is. Kalamullah is made up of sounds. These sounds, which you can take and use if you like, and come up with something. And no matter if all the ins and all the jinn were to gather together to try to come up with something even remotely comparable to the Qur'an, they would not be able to. So it is there as building blocks that, somebody has explained it like that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the Qur'an and has put within it some building blocks. Take them, use them, see what you'll come up with, and of course you will not be able to come up with anything. So وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ, which is what these fringes are considered, and the Qur'an al-Azim in one of the interpretations. So these are, I'm just putting them all in front of you to broaden your scope. I hope not to confuse you. I hope I'm not confusing you. I will see when we finish the talk whether I have confused you or just broadened your scope of research. So what did we just find out? We just found out that the 3 unique sounds which were not mentioned in the Mathani are the Qur'an. The Qaf, Ra, and Noon. And the vowel sound is there, but that's the Qur'an. So that's why وَلَقَدْ أَعْطَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِ وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ. So in Arabic grammar, any word which is in accordance with the noun fa'lan is about something which is happening right now and has reached its utmost quality taking place at this instant. So when you say that this is the Qur'an, you are talking about the verb qara'a, right? The verb qara'a, and you are giving it its utmost supreme. So it's a supreme kind of qira'a. It's not a qira'a, it's a Qur'an. It is supreme in its beauty as a qira'a and in its value. And it is also what happening at this instant. So anybody who is reciting Qur'an is doing so at this instant. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Hayy al-Qayyum, is allowing this Qur'an to be interactive with anyone who is alive and seeking interaction. So that's the beauty of any word in accordance with the grammatical form of fa'lan. So if you were to look further, you will notice Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Qur'an, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. The three most important words here are Ar-Rahman and Al-Quran and Al-Insan, and all of these three are what are according to the sound of fa'lan, meaning that they are what? They are actually happening right now, taking place right now in the superlative form of the verb of action. So this is very important when we talk about Quran. That's the difference between Quran and Kitab, and we spoke about that last week. Inshallah, we'll talk about it later also. So Quran is about al-an, it's about now. If you look at the word here, and everything which ends with an is about now. Ar-Rahman, Al-Quran, Al-Insan. That's the difference between anything which sounds like fa'lan and anything which does not sound like fa'lan. So we just said that those were 11 sounds. Remember the fringes? We said they had 11 sounds, 11 letters of the fringes. Well, listen to this now. Arabi, which is the language of the Quran, not our language. We speak Arabic, Al-Arabiya. We speak Al-Arabiya. We don't speak Arabi. So Arabi is the language of the Quran. It's in its purest and most elevated form. Arabi has, Wallahu a'lam, that's my opinion, but people have said so, scholars have said so, and of course we can never know because it's ghaib, but it is probably the language of Ahl al-Jannah. Adam must have had some form of Arabi given to him when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allamahu al-asma'a kullaha. Now, Arabi, if you compare it with other languages on earth, you will find that it has non-paralleled continuity throughout the ages. And today, it contains traces of the origin of human communication before we had words. Like before you had a word to explain what you wanted to say, each sound had a meaning. Each sound had a meaning. Just that, take that, notice that what I'm just saying now. Each sound actually is a genuine record of earliest human expression. What sound? Arabi sound. Each Arabi sound. The Arabic tongue is unique. Why did we say 11? Because 11 happens to be the minimum number of sounds in human language. No human language today has less than 11 sounds. The one that they say may have 10 phonemes or 10 sounds is the language of the Piraha of Amazonia, who live in the Amazons in Brazil. It's interesting to read about those people. Their language has 10, some people say 11 phonemes. The Rotocas is considered the fewest and it has 11. So back to our Mathani, 11 sound. Ibn Jinni, who died in 1002, he's one of the people I researched also. He wrote a book called Al-Khasa'is, and he gave us linguistic evidence. And he said before language evolved, in the earliest human communication, each uttered sound pointed to a distinct meaning. Each sound we utter points to a distinct meaning. Look at them here. Like the lip sound, you will find the fa, the ba, the wa, and the ma. You see here the lip sound. And then you will find at the end of the throat, right at the base of the throat, the qa. So each sound has a meaning. And you know what? In Arabic, it still does. And it's sometimes in Arabic too, because our Arabic is, it has a lot of Arabi in it. It has a lot of that. When I say Arabic, I mean what we talk, what we speak, what we write. When I say Arabi, I mean the Arabi of the Qur'an. So there's a big difference between Arabi of the Qur'an and our Arabic. But in some ways they meet. And so we're going to see here how they do that. Every baby on earth cries mama. Every baby on earth cries mama. Why? It's instinctive. He doesn't think about it. It's instinctive. Why? Because when humans were created, they did that, intending something. Intending what? When the babies were born, they intended. So what did they intend by that? Let's look at the meaning of sounds. Ma. What do you do when you pronounce the ma? You put your lips together. So by putting your lips together, what are you doing? You are gathering, collecting, bringing together, coming together. We call in Ibn Jinni, he calls it al-lam wa-dam. You put your lips together. So ma signifies gathering. That's what it means. That's what the sound ma means. Means to bring together or gather together. The sound is the only sound, if you stood somewhere and shouted it out, it's the only sound which would return to you as an echo. So means come back, answer me, return. So why does every baby on earth say mama? Come back to me and gather me. Come back to me and gather me. Come back. I want you to come and hug me. Come back. That's why each baby on earth says mama. Here is the list. I'm not going to go through it, but what I would like us to do is to look for 3 letters. So open your eyes. I hope that you can see the screen well. And I'm going to point my mouse and I'll help you. So let's look for 3 letters. I'm going to look now for the gha in Arabic. I want to look for a letter that signifies disappearance. There it is, and that's the gha. The gha sound signifies disappearance. As I said, each sound has a meaning. So here we're at the gha, which is disappearance. Okay, so if somebody is disappearing and continuing to disappear, let's look at which sound gives us continuation and repetition. Now, the only sound to give us repetition is the sound reread, rewrite, redo. What's the sound that means to repeat? It's the ra. Why? Because any other sound, when you say any other sound, it doesn't repeat itself. You can say ba, it's a ba. You can say da, it's one da. You can say ha, it's one ha. Sa, one sa. But if you say ra, notice that your tongue and your mouth unwillingly, you're not trying it to do it. You're not forcing it, but unwillingly it will come out as more than one ra. The ra always comes out as like 3 ras, 4 ras, the ra, it reverberates. So what's the meaning of, what's sound in Arabi gives you the meaning of repetition, ra, ra. So here we have, where is it? The ra, continuation, repetition. And then let's look at another word which we just saw earlier on our screen before, which is at the end of our throat, which gives us the meaning of the core, or something that is what? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Reaching the end or the base or the core or the crux of something. The base or the end of it's the qa. Okay. So now those of you who don't know Arabic, let's put those 3 words together. So disappearance is first, repetition of that disappearance or continuation of that disappearance. So we'll start with the gha, and then we'll do the ra, which is continuation, repetition there. And then we'll do the qa. And then we put them together, we have the word gha, ra, qa. And that word in Arabic means in English to drown. Isn't that amazing? Drown. You disappear, you repeat or continue to disappear until you reach the core, the base, and that is drown. So you will notice that the language, the Arabi language, is so special that each sound has a meaning, that when you put the meanings together, like you did with mama, like you did with gharaqa, you will find that that word says what it means. It sounds what it means. Its meaning is there, embedded in the word. You don't have to invent a word for the meaning. The meaning is already there. Those of you who know Arabic would also be interested to know that the fa, for example, because you open your mouth, fa. Fa means to open. Fa means fataha. Fa is about opening. Where's the fa here? Let's take a look. There it is. Fa, open, exposed, unravel. Fa. Okay, now if I open fa and I close ma, fam. What is that? That's my mouth. Fam. Arabic, fam means mouth. But if somebody did not close their mouth, they opened it fa and they did not close it, then what does it become? It's not fam anymore. They did not close it. Ma. Ma is to bring together. They did not do that. So that mouth has a different word. That that mouth is not called fam anymore. It is called fa, fa. He did not close his mouth. So by looking at that, we can understand. Let's look here. Those of you who read Qur'an, mashallah, I know many of you are Qur'an reciters, and we'd love one day that you would read for us Qur'an with your beautiful voices. So let's look right here at the word ha, at the sound, sorry, at the sound ha. What's the sound ha about? Stimulation, endearment, love, the hub of stimulation, excitement, even fear, dread, fear, endearment, and love. Sorry. I'm looking at the ha here. I'm not looking at the ha. Sorry. The ha is the hub of stimulation, endearment, and love. Sorry. The ha, it's similar, but the ha is more about breath. The ha is about breath and breathlessness, stimulation, excitement, hollering, asking for help, hey, hi, oh, help, all of those. The ha is about breathlessness. It's about the breath, ha. So those of you who read Qur'an and recite Qur'an, you will notice that some ayahs have a ha, even though the Arabic word doesn't and shouldn't. The Arabic word in all the uses of the Arabic and in the ma'ajim and the dictionaries will not have the ha. In the Surah Al-Haqqa, Ya laytani lam uta kitabiyah wa lam adri ma hisabiyah. I wish I had never gotten my compilation, ha, and I had not known my results, ha. Ma aghna anni maliyah. My wealth did nothing to help me, ha. You see, there's a ha. Mali, my wealth has a ha. Halaka anni sultaniyah. I have no power. My power has left me. Halaka anni sultaniyah. So here in Arabic, you would not say sultaniyah. You would say sultani. You would not say maliyah. You'd say mali, kitabi, hisabi. That's the right way. But of course, there's no right way and wrong way. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is the right way. He said it the right way because that's the way that person will be saying it on the day of judgment. He is breathless, so he will put the ha there. So I'm just showing you the difference between Arabic and any other language on earth. If you have the power and the ability and the time, you can make the time to learn Arabic, please do, my dear sisters. Please do. And you will, inshallah, you'll pray for me one day when you do. Because there's nothing like Arabic. There's nothing like Arabic. You don't have to learn the Arabic the way we speak. Just learn the Quranic Arabic. And so you have another one also in Surah Al-Qari'ah. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَهْ. Also you have the ha to show this breathlessness. Arabic is different, but the word Arabic itself, what does it mean? It means mu'rib. It means that it is showing you eloquently descriptive of itself. The language itself is eloquently descriptive of itself. You don't need more than the Arabic to understand what the word, what it means, or you have no means of explaining better than the Arabic. Let's put it that way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows the Arabic for the Qur'an and chose the Qur'an for the Arabic. Qur'an preserved the Arabic language, but it is the Arabic which will always preserve the Qur'anic intent. So the Qur'an preserved the Arabic language, meaning our language. The Qur'an helped preserve it, yes, and it preserved the Arabic also. But it is the Arabic which will always preserve the Qur'anic intent. And as I said last week, I'll say again, oh Arabs, Arab, ya Habibat, you should be Ansar Allah. You should be the ones who are showing those who don't speak Arabic what Arabic is. You should be teaching them. Whatever you know, just teach those who don't know Arabic. Why? You are the Ansar. You are the Ansar who know Arabic. They are the Muhajirin who don't know Arabic. You should be doing that. That's your duty as a believer, inshallah. So the Qur'an's eloquent Arabic and its context both relayed what? Intact. They were both intact from one generation to another, word for word, intonation by intonation. It is always current. It is awaiting us. Those of you who read Qur'an and you recite the Qur'an, you are reciting the Qur'an, inshallah. This is amazing. The other day, Hamza Yusuf was talking about that. It's amazing that you are reciting the Qur'an because you know makharij al-huruf, because you know all of those things that our predecessors have left us. May Allah bless them. Ameen ya Rab. You are reciting the Qur'an as the first Sahaba were reciting it. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just amazing, mind-boggling that we can do that? Subhanallah, may Allah reward every single person who put something in our hands that we are using today. Ameen ya Rab. So the summary for our talk today, we spoke about the background to the opener, we spoke about Hadith, we spoke about names given to the Fatiha, we spoke about scholarly opinions on the verse numbers, spoke about the context markers and nujoom, we spoke about their significance, we spoke about the Mathani, that those fringes, what different people have said about the fringes. We spoke about controversial examples of tafsir from real life, how how the context marker changes that sometimes. We spoke about the Arabi sounds and about the linguistic significance of the Qur'an. We will end with just looking at this from Surah Al-Haqqa. Al-Haqqa. What is Al-Haqqa? It is the implementer of truth and justice. The implementer. تحق الحق. تحق الحق فهي الحاقة. This surah is amazing. So we're just going to look at a few things here and conclude. What does it say? Verse 18 informs the listeners that everyone shall be displayed that day. You shall be displayed. May Allah forgive us. Everybody shall be displayed. You will be on display that day. Nothing of you will be left concealed. May Allah forgive us. So the day that we shall be displayed and nothing else, and we shall not be able to conceal anything, on that day, there are some whose compilation of deeds is brought to them from their right or on their right, or given to them on their right. Some people say their right hand. Allahu A'lam. Given to them by their right hand. Allahu A'lam. So, أَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ. Somebody whose compilation was brought to him on his right or from his right or on his right hand shall say what? That indicates a favorable assessment of his life's work. Such a person will be very pleased of having his book, his compilation in his right hand. And he will say, come, here it is, come, and what? And read and peruse and look at my kitabi. But he doesn't say my kitabi, which is my compilation. He said kitabiyah. So here you have the ha of joy. Iqra'u kitabiyah. إني ظننت أني ملاق حسابيه. I indeed knew and thought and believed that I am going to be meeting my hisab, my hisabi. But he did not say my hisabi, he said my hisabiyah. What's the ha here? The ha of overjoyment. He's fully overjoyed. فهو في عيشة راضية في جنة عالية. قطوفها دانية كلوا واشربوا هنيئا بما أسلفتم في الأيام الخالية. Such a person shall be well pleased in a lofty garden with low-hanging fruit for the picking. Because of what? Because of Allah giving them to enjoy what they had done before in the days bygone, enjoying their fruit of their past deed. May we be among them, Ya Rab. May we be among them, Ya Rab. May we be among them, Ya Rab. Ya Rab.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.